Pitch to Pro is the official podcast of Ozark United FC. This will be our platform to tell our story about the club and the special place that we call home, Northwest Arkansas. This is a journey. We want to bring you along for the ride. We'll share what's going on behind the curtain, help educate the community at large about soccer, our league, and give updates on the progress of the club along the way. Together, we'll explore and unpack our journey to professional soccer, the magic that is NWA, our community, and talk all things soccer from on the pitch to behind the scenes, telling the story of our club. Pitch to Pro podcast is proudly sponsored by podcastvideos.com. Podcastvideos.com is Northwest Arkansas's premier podcast recording studio. Equipped with industry-leading equipment, the recording studio and services save you time, money, and hassle. They are dedicated to helping you create, record, and publish high-quality podcasts for your audience. Be sure to check them out today at podcastvideos.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Pitch to Pro podcast. I'm your host, Wes Harris, Managing Director for Ozark United FC, Northwest Arkansas's professional soccer club, playing in the United Soccer League. Today, we continue our incredibly insightful conversation with Mr. Brett Johnson, owner at Rhode Island FC in Ipswich Town in the Premier League. You know, last time, Brett, first of all, thank you for coming back on the show. Really, really appreciate your time.
My pleasure, man.
And last time, just to recap, we talked a little bit about your background, how you got into soccer, your success in learning from Phoenix Rising, the growth of USL. We talked a little bit about some stadiums and how those are great solutions, different asset classes, the rise and growth of women's soccer, and with the launch of the USL Super League and the opportunities that provides. I think if we pick it up from there, let's talk and really dive into, you started teasing them on the last episode, but kind of your newer projects, right? With Rhode Island and then Ipswich. Let's talk first a little bit about Rhode Island and what you guys are building there, because, man, it's special. From at least watching from the outside in, I know you can help provide a little bit more insight and being there on the ground and part of that group. So talk a little bit about that project and what makes it so special.
Yeah. So it's a prime real estate that has been lying literally fallow since the Industrial Revolution. So Pawtucket, Rhode Island is right outside of Providence. It's right on the water. This is prime riverfront real estate. But Pawtucket was the birthplace of the American Industrial Revolution. And the legacy of that was that this was highly polluted land that was owned by the power company. It is owned by the power company. We've done a long-term lease on it. But they were going to, before we came along, they were going to clean it up and just fence it. And then we came along and proposed building the stadium there, and it's a perfect use for it. And then we've leased the surrounding land, which is owned by the city of Pawtucket, and we're going to build housing and retail and hospitality. And so we're really going to create sort of a 365 live, work, play destination. And, you know, while a lot of people have been kind of leaving Pawtucket, the hospital left, the baseball team left, Hasbro, which is headquartered there, they've been over time threatening to leave the city, potentially leave the state. So I'm very proud of the fact that our ownership group is investing tens of millions of dollars. The state and the city have joined and partnered with us to provide the requisite support to build this stadium. You know, stadiums at the end of the day are public assets. This is going to become the sports and entertainment capital for Southern New England, not just Rhode Island. And so we'll host every single rectangular sport there. It'll be professional. It'll be collegiate. We already have inbound from, you know, Rhode Island has got an embarrassment of riches relative to fantastic colleges and universities. And so I see this facility being a home for a lot of their games. And then I think increasingly sports like rugby and Premier Lacrosse, you know, this is a perfect size venue. And I try to say it all the time. Only Taylor Swift is selling out Gillette at the moment, you know, not too many people. So, and going to watch an event, including the New England Revolution in a 70,000 seat stadium, if you're selling 25,000 tickets, that's not optimal.
No.
And so I'm just bullish on when we build it, they will come. But it's going to be a world-class modern stadium with all the latest amenities, food and beverage, and sight lines. As anyone who's gone into any of these world-class soccer-specific stadiums, and I like to use the example here in my backyard of LAFC. I think it's now BMO Stadium.
Yes.
You can't find a bad seat in that house. there's not one seat in that stadium that you wouldn't watch a game and be happy. That'll be the same thing for our stadium in Rhode Island. I mean, the proximity to the pitch, as anyone knows, again, with the way that these architects are being able to design this, it's just world class. So I say to people all the time, like, I'm thrilled with how we're doing at Bryant University in our first season. We're drawing good crowds. It's, not the ideal location. Fantastic location if you're Bryant University, not the ideal location if you're a professional sports team starting up. But it's been a fantastic partnership for us to get into the market and show people what Rhode Island FC is about, like literally on and off the pitch. So the confidence level I have as we move into next season, this world-class stadium in a great location, right off the highway, right outside of Providence, right near a light rail station, all those things are going to make this a very, very special place to come. And even if you're not a football fan per se, if you come, as you know, you come and witness that game, you will be by the time the game's over. We will convert one fan at a time, just by being in that venue. And if you're a Rhode Islander, look, the reality, Rhode Island is an incredibly special state. Anyone who's had the opportunity, being there, being from there, spending time there like I have, you recognize just how special a state that is. But the reality is Rhode Island on a national stage hasn't had a lot to amplify. So having a professional team that's on the news, that's on the road, that's starting to draw attention to it, media attention to it, televised games, et cetera, all of that's incredibly positive. And again, from my perspective, I take it with complete humility, but I'm very proud of what our ownership group is doing to start to change the trajectory of that state.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a couple things there. Just to reiterate, atmosphere matters. It's not just about how many fans you're bringing to the venue, right? To your point, 20,000 and 70,000 is just a poor atmosphere. You're not going to have the same level. Even though you sold 20,000, you're not going to have the same level of repeat and return from those fans and coming, that general fan, right? The soccer fans will come, but they're not the whole fan base. And it's about bringing in and creating that atmosphere for people that excites them, that converts those soccer fans to come back. And you would have a much better success rate of doing that with 7,500 seats and filling 7,400 or 7,300. And having people, queuing up in the wait list for season tickets and all of that, and generating that and proving that out. So I think that's something awesome for people to hear, because for me, that's one of the things that separates soccer, is the live product, and the atmosphere that's created there is just so different. And that's what helps convert people. So that, again, is where the stadium solution is just so critical. As these clubs get going and you see the success long term for the ones that are doing it right.
Yeah, amen. Again, it was an expensive endeavor for us to launch. When the stadium got delayed, we made the calculated decision that we were still going to launch the team. We entered into this partnership with Bryant University. We've made that facility, at least in person and on television, as good as it can be. And the great thing is the fans are really resonating with it, and Rhode Island's been doing well. But even when you see, especially the supporters groups and the energy and the music and the smoke, their passion for it, like, that's infectious. And so increasingly Rhode Islanders are leaving that, and I guarantee the word of mouth that they're going back to their friends and extended family and starting to say, man, I was at this game the other night and saw Rhode Island win against Hartford, win against Tampa, and man, I can't wait till this stadium opens up. So again, it's what I view with, again, total humility, is why I'm so proud to be involved with a league like USL in markets like Rhode Island, and excited about what we're doing, but excited about what a host of other clubs are doing across the league as we look to take, especially World Cup's coming back in 2026. It'll take the sport to a whole nother level here. So I think it's just a great time to be in the broader ecosystem. But at the end of the day, all of this stuff is local, and so you really you need to find ways to resonate with that fan base to really be an important pillar of the community. And it's interesting because obviously I've got the honor of being associated with Ipswich, which has been around for 150 years now, back in the Premier League. Like, it's a club that people all over the world truly care about. So on one side, you have one club with such gravitas and history. And then on the other side, you got a club that's literally just starting to build sort of, the hearts and minds associated with it. So two different ends of the spectrum, but two areas that you can end up having a great deal of pride in terms of being associated with.
And you just mentioned it, so it's a fantastic segue. Let's chat a little bit about your experience with Ipswich. How did you get involved? Experiencing promotion as a club into the Premier League, and the campaign so far. Any key learnings? Obviously, there's differences, right? With Premier League and Championship versus USL. It's the UK with the steeped tradition and history versus a newer soccer, nation. So obviously there's going to be some differences there, but just talk a little bit about Ipswich, if you could, and your experience there, because I think it's a fascinating story.
Yeah, I mean, just try to be somewhat brief on it, but Bear Kay and Mark Detmer, my partners in Phoenix Rising, the three of us partnered with this Arizona-based pension fund, and then an agent and a platform out of Ohio called ORG, a gentleman by the name of Ed Schwartz. And so we all partnered up with each other and acquired Ipswich Ipswich Town 3 years ago. And we specifically coveted the opportunity because Ipswich was in League One at the time we bought it. So, I'm sure most of your fan base knows this, but, that's the third level of English football. Ipswich had been relegated from the Premier League down to Championship, from Championship down to League One. And they were on the wrong side of League One, meaning the bottom half of the table when we bought it. And they play in a iconic 30,000 seat stadium, but they were pulling at the time, I think, like 12,000 fans on average. So anyway, the key element of our success is getting Mark Ashton to come on board to be the CEO. Mark has an incredible history in sport. I met him. I had the pleasure of meeting him and kind of recognizing that he was a unique talent in English football. I'd kind of rate him as arguably the best CEO in English football. And so convincing Mark to come on board as CEO, and whatever hopes and expectations we had for Mark, and they were high, it'd be an understatement to say he's blown them all away. And in 3 short years, back-to-back promotions, and Mark, among many things, he had the vision to see the talent that is Kieran McKenna, and we hired Kieran away from Man U, and Kieran has had the best record on pitch performance in terms of wins in the EFL over the last 2 seasons. So it's been an incredible blessing to be a part of it, and long may it continue. And now being in the Premier League is just surreal. But I'm honored to be involved with it, and honored for whatever role I played associated with it. And there's nothing like English football. There's nothing like the Premier League as far as I'm concerned. And again, there's nothing like the construct of promotion, relegation, and games of consequences. There's no off day. There's not one goal that doesn't matter. There's not one game that doesn't matter. And the level of commitment of the fan bases on a global basis, day in and day out, to leagues with promotion relegations, especially in England, there's nothing like it. It's the NFL, it's the NBA, and it's Major League Baseball all wrapped up into one.
Yeah, I'm a diehard, since I was 8 years old, Liverpool fan, and I was at Steven Gerrard's last match at Anfield, and that was... I don't want to offend anybody, but as a soccer fan, that was a holy experience for me. When You'll Never Walk Alone was sang at the beginning of the game, I literally cried.
It's a special club. And again, everyone who's associated with it. I mean, but, you've got your Spurs fans, your Arsenal fans. And I mean, now Chelsea anyway. I've long suffering Man City fans who've been with the club, literally following it since birth, and so, and a lot of people don't recognize there were some long periods of time where Man City was not Man City, if you will. But anyway, there's something special about it. And so I love, and I feel very, very honored to be associated with Ipswich and to see the resurgence, literally and figuratively, on and off the pitch with that club, with that fan base, with the town and surrounding areas. And the economic impact has been staggering. As you know, again, as I like to say, long may it continue. But it's exciting time in football. I think there's a lot of ownership groups that are doing special things both in the States and overseas with football. And increasingly every month you seemingly see another American or American ownership group that's deciding to invest in the sport. And so
let's talk about that for a second. You brought it up in the previous episode, and it's a nice segue again. You're just a phenomenal guest, Brett. You're just perfectly setting every segment up here. But multi-club ownership. So you're part of that class now, right? And so talk a little bit about that and how that's developing. And you're even starting to see it now in the private equity space as well. So just kind of, what do you see there? What are your thoughts? Talk a little bit about that trend and how that may impact the sport. I know you could have 10 episodes on this topic, but just, if you could briefly kind of touch on that in your experience.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, just to clarify, so the common denominator, if you will, between Phoenix Rising, Rhode Island, and Ipswich is me. And that's where it begins and ends. Like there's no, so I just want to clarify that, I don't view as I'm part of a multi-club ownership. I have multi-club interests, if you will, but specifically to your question, increasingly as your listeners know, is that ownership groups are pursuing a very strategic multi-club ownership approach. And I think that trend is in the early stages. I think it will continue to advance for a lot of reasons. And again, I think over time, I'll just be generic. If you have your Premier League team, it makes a lot of sense to have your European continent team, your Belgian club, your French club, your Portuguese club, for a lot of reasons, including a pathway to have your talent funnel up to your highest and best club. And again, from my perspective, as these multi-club ownership groups continue to expand, I feel strongly, especially with World Cup coming back in 26, all eyes will be on United States, all eyes will be on North America. And I think a lot of ownership groups will want to tap the unparalleled athletic talent in many respects that is, the United States, the demographics of the United States, the incredible immigrant base that we have in the United States, and these kids that are playing the sport at an earlier age and deciding to go pro literally in this sport, much, younger all the time. So I think a lot of them will want to have what I'll call a U.S. Club ownership. And what I believe is if you put on a scale a USL team, I'll use Louisville as an example. If you put their world-class stadium, their world-class training facility, their world-class ownership group, their world-class location, I suspect over time, Louisville becomes very, very interesting to a deep-pocketed multi-club ownership group. And I'm biased, but I'm confident that Rhode Island will be in that same frame. We're very close, we're wedged between New York and Boston, two fantastic airports that get you to every single capital in Europe. And we're going to have a world-class stadium. We'll have a world-class training facility. We'll have world-class players that will get quality minutes. So anyway, long way of saying that I think the multi-club ownership, especially because I do think as large as the overall transfer market is, and, by most estimates, it's $8 billion a year. There's a lot of things going on the legal front in terms of challenging some of the economics associated with that. And I don't necessarily think that that's bad, or maybe I should say it differently. I think it could be a real positive where clubs start to rely more on developing talent than buying talent, if you will. And if that's the case, if they go with the development option, again, you would want a United States-based USL platform for both men and women getting quality minutes in front of good audiences in world-class facilities. That to me, and again, on a relative basis, if you look at what that investment would entail, let's say it's $25 million. Let's say it's $50 million to buy an equity stake of means into a USL. That's a rounding error of what it would cost you to try to buy a stake in an MLS team where honestly you don't get a T-shirt at the end of the day.
No, exactly. You're spot on. And thank you for checking me. I didn't mean to conflate the two, but thank you for the insight. And I think you hit on a couple of really key points in terms of what is a potential and something, frankly, you're already starting to see within those that are, involved and count themselves as a part of that. And I think we'll have one more. We have time for one more topic, and you kind of hit on it. Let's kind of flip back to Rhode Island. But if you could, can you talk a little bit about what you see, and you're doing it in Tidewater Landing, kind of sports anchored, what's being called sports anchored entertainment districts or development opportunities, if you will, that are tied and anchored by professional sport. Soccer, we're starting to see this, definitely within our league. You guys are part of that. But, you've seen it even in Major League Baseball with the Braves and the Battery, what the Colorado Rockies did with Lodo, and you're starting to see it in other sports as well. But if you could just kind of talk a little bit about what you guys are doing there and kind of the trend there within sports anchored entertainment districts and development.
Yeah. What I'm very proud of is we're building a live, work, play 365-day destination anchored by initially a USL men's championship team that has enabled us to finance a world-class stadium. And then we will develop all the surrounding real estate, residential, retail, hospitality, et cetera. And so when you talk about the Atlanta Braves, or in my backyard, LA Live, you talk about, the Colorado Rockies. I mean, there are countless examples in what I'll call major sports. Mm-hmm. It's not a stretch for any of them to pull that off if they can get the right location, et cetera. What I'm proud of is that we're doing it with USL. We're doing it with men's, and then we're going to, as I said, we're going to add a women's team. And so, I love the ability to bring to a state like Rhode Island that was being underserved by professional sports, and in fact, actually being had a complete disservice because they had a AAA team that picked up and left. And so the fact that we can now drive professional sports, Rhode Island now has a team of its own. It's about to have two teams of its own when we launch the women's team. It's not an affiliate and a minor league of an out of town, sports franchise. It's really Rhode Island's team. So again, all of those things I think are game changers and become elements of pride, elements of social and economic impact. And ultimately, what I'm probably most proud of is you're taking an area that was really economically challenged, and you're completely cleaning up and transforming that area and creating an incredible amount of jobs. And then again, a day in and day out catalyst for creating a source of pride, not just for the state of Rhode Island and Rhode Islanders, but for what I call Southern New England. And so anyway, it's a long, long way of saying that it's so sad. None of it's been easy. It's taken a long, long time. I certainly have a couple extra gray hairs as a result of kind of the twists and turns, but we stuck with it. And when that stadium opens and almost 11, it's 10,500, when we've got 10,500 people in that stadium, I really believe that will start to, the genesis of it will be, we will host so many additional sports, so many different events. And so that stadium becomes a real driver of pride for Rhode Island. Again, it becomes the sports and entertainment capital for the state of Rhode Island, which it was lacking beforehand. And the reality is it's almost, I'm biased, but I really view it's almost like having like an airport. Everyone would question why a place doesn't have an airport if it wanted to be of significance. I think it's similarly, you need a sports and entertainment complex, if you will. And Rhode Island, there are lots of communities that have an embarrassment of riches in that regard, and there are lots of communities that don't. And I think where I get excited with USL is USL has a pathway where we can do a lot of what we've done in Rhode Island elsewhere. And you guys are a good example. I know that in terms of what you guys are doing in Arkansas.
Fantastic insight, Brett. I mean, that's a great comparison. I've never really thought about it that way, but that's so cool to even think about that in that way. But man, thank you so much. I want to be respectful of your time. I think we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me. It was a pleasure having you on.
It's a real honor. It's a real pleasure to, as I say, to ever get to speak about what I do. But thank you for for your interest and your time. And I can't wait to get in and see what you guys are up to. I've been watching it from afar. I've been a massive cheerleader. But as I said earlier, I couldn't have more respect for Warren, Warren Smith, and by extension, you. And I know you're building something special. And that's exactly what we need across the league. We need, incredible ownership groups in great locations that are literally putting a flag in the ground and turning on the lights and making this as special a league as possible. So thank you for everything you guys are doing.
Awesome. Thank you, Brett. Thanks for everything you do for the beautiful game, and can't wait to come and see Rhode Island and Tidewater Landing soon, my friend.
Amen.
That's it for this episode of Pitch to Pro. We hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to tune in for our next episode. And until then, cheers, Northwest Arkansas. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Pitch to Pro podcast. Be sure to tune in again in 2 weeks for the next installment. And check out the Stoppage Time series for a recap of today's episode. Be sure to find us at Pitch to Pro on YouTube, Instagram, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Until next time, Northwest Arkansas, cheers.